Is using, oh sorry, go on, you had a
One
question?
I've heard of, you spray, you paint it, at least in my case, but some people spray undercoat in the rust colour, then you put on that, you drop on patches of, there's like a rubber compound you can get.
Okay, so this is going to be the second technique,
and
yeah.
then you paint over the top coat.
Yep. So that's, I would call that like a liquid latex masking type scenario. And that is so easy to use, and it's, it can create really, and that's probably like the technique you doing train type railway stuff will be really handy for you.
Yep.
And the last one is the easiest out of a lot of them, and is accessible to anybody. Yeah, we good? Yep. It's just a little bit of sponge chipping. Has anyone done any sponge chipping before? Ever heard of it? Yeah, cool. Yeah, nice. Yeah, well that's all right. We'll try and work out why it did work or why it didn't work, and we'll just have a bit of play around with it. Does anyone got any ideas on what colour chipping should be?
Rust, I suppose.
Okay, yeah.
Well, the undercoat is.
There you go, that's the answer I wanted, yeah. So it can be anything, right? So if it's an aluminium piece of equipment, the chipping colour is going to be an aluminium colour. You know, if it's rusty tank, then of course it's going to be the darkish brown sort of colours. It's also good to use it for superficial scuffs and scratches and things like that on aircraft and sci-fi, where you I'm going to use this model as the demonstration model. It's just an old Tamiya Abrams. But I'm going to be showing, actually why don't I just get started into it. It's because we can do some superficial chipping and things like that just by varying the tone of the colour that's underneath the top colour, right? So for anyone who isn't familiar with hairspray chipping, this technique, you put the base, you need to work out what the colour of your chip is going to be before you start, right? So I've just sort of thrown everything at this. I've got a bit of aluminium, a bit of aluminium, a bit of a rusty brown colour. It doesn't really matter what it is for this. It's really just about showing you guys how it works. I've just got a little bit of a tape mask here because I just want to keep that section free of the masking, the hairspray. With the hairspray technique, the question that gets asked all the time is, can you use hairspray? So the one I'll be using is a MIG product, a chipping fluid. Pretty much every manufacturer will do a chipping fluid. Can you use hairspray? Depends. Like I'm talking hairspray out of a rattle can over the thing, right? It does work. It will do the same thing. It's just some hairsprays tend to be hotter, if you like, than others. And I've had hairsprays melt paint and all sorts of stuff. So these off-the-shelf branded products are your safest bet because it just can be a bit unpredictable. If you're in a stretch and you want to try the hairspray, then absolutely give it a go on an old model, and it'll give you a feel for the technique anyway. So I've painted this one. It was painted in Tamiya lacquers for what it's worth. So lacquer paints tend to be a lot more harder wearing than acrylic paints do. Which is important because this effect we're gonna scrub and whatnot. So we need to make sure the integrity of our paint is sound before we start doing anything. That's why I've used lacquer paints, because they're a lot more hard wearing than acrylics. If you're going to use acrylics, you certainly can do it. If I'm talking over anyone's head about paint types, just pull me up. But if you're going to use acrylic paints as your base layer, make sure you prime your model before you start, just to give it the best chance of grabbing. And I would prime just with a rattle can of Mr. Prime or Mr. Surfacer or whatever it's called. We all good? So I've actually given this one a coat of this chipping fluid. I did it at home because I would usually do 2 to 3 coats of the chipping fluid. The more chipping fluid we put on, the easier it will be to chip. Okay, and I'm just trying to obviously speed this demo up, but I wanted to show you how this stuff goes down through the airbrush, because it looks pretty ugly, and if you flood the surface it'll just become a bit of a mess. So that's why I've bought the airbrush, and I thought I'd show you, but I also wanted to show you how quick the process is as well.
Do you tend to do the whole thing or just the parts that you go and chip?
That's actually a really good question. You really only need to do the bit you want to chip, but it can sort of affect the integrity, or not even the integrity, well, yeah, actually the integrity. If you don't want to chip, 80% of the model, don't risk it. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're creating a layer between our base layer. We've got our base layer, and then a base layer of hairspray, and then we're going to put our top coat, our colour on. And the idea is we're then going to scrub it with a bit of water. The water migrates through the top coat of paint, and because this is a water-based product, it will tend to break it up, and it'll allow us to chip the paint in a realistic looking way. So that's the process. So let's put a bit, I'm not diluting that with anything, I'm not doing. This is going to be real hard to see because it's, just clear going down. But I'm not flooding it. You're welcome to come up and have a look if you like, but looks quite beaded. So I'm only sort of pulling the trigger back about halfway. So yeah, not flooding. If I was to flood that, it's just going to become a watery mess and not going to work for us. So I don't know can you guys see what that looks like? So it looks kind of a little bit beaded, a little bit, whatever. Yeah, it looks like it hasn't gone on properly. Yeah, pretty much. So people would look at that and go, "Oh, this is not working," and they'd try to put more down, and yeah, it's just not going to work that way. But literally, I'll just do this one again. I've used the tape here just to. Well, it's like you were suggesting. I'm only wanting to chip this side of the model. But the good thing with this, I've got the hairdryer here, so I'll just give it a quick blast. Like if I was using this technique on the bench, you can speed the process up with the heat gun really quick. You can see it sort of evaporating and drying. I know you guys can't see it, but you have to trust me here. So that's ready to take paint now. If you can, you're welcome to pass it around. Obviously we'll just try and move it quickly, but if anyone wants to see, it's got like a real mottled sort of look to it. So I'm not going to worry too much about that because we're going to put a top coat of paint on it. And if that mottling affects that top coat still, which can sometimes happen, like, it's not actually adding layers or anything, it's literally just an effect, but usually a matte varnish or a satin varnish or something will kill that anyway, just dull it right down. Pardon me. I'm going to put another coat on this just because I want to make sure it's going to chip well for you guys. So this will be the third coat. So you saw how quick that coat was. We'll just throw this one on till... Actually, you know what? I'll just do half of it. And we'll see if the one with 3 coats chips easier than the one with 2. I mean, it should, right? That's what they tell me. Yeah, I haven't. The other thing you can do, drying, if you didn't have the hairdryer or whatever, just blow air through it and just run it over the top of it. And you literally just see it starting to evaporate. And then once it dries, just go over the top of it again. There are different types of this chipping fluid you can get. So this one is they just call it chipping fluid. It won't be as aggressive or prominent as something like this is another one they call worn effects. The paint will come off in big hunks, whereas this is more sort of targeted chipping that you would use it for. All right. Now I'm going to...
work with any
Okay, so kind of. That's a good answer, eh? So lacquer paints will be harder to chip than acrylics. I could paint that in an acrylic paint, come back after a few days and comfortably know that I'm going to be able to reactivate that. The acrylic paint's far more porous, which will take the water and I'll be able to chip it. But an SMS lacquer is a really hot lacquer. I would be making sure I was chipping that real quick. Yeah, because once that dries, it'll dry hard. Tamiya paints, the real colour range, stuff like that are a really sort of nice middle ground. Sometimes acrylic paints can be too easy to chip. Yeah, you sort of try to be...
That'd be impossible.
Say that again?
Enamels sound like that.
No, not at all. I actually don't, I don't spray enamels. I use enamels for panel line washes and things like that. But you can get some really interesting techniques with enamel paints and chipping fluid. Mig Jimenez uses a lot of like dust effects and stuff using enamels. And you'd think, well, because the water reacts, repels the enamel paint, it sort of beads and looks funny, but when you start dragging it down, it's just, you get some really interesting effects. But you'd need an airbrush to do it. You couldn't. I don't think so. And trying to do what we're about to do here with a brush would be difficult, because if you're brush painting on your top colour, you're introducing fluid to the system. Well, it's more you'd be setting off this chipping fluid, and the chipping fluid would be mixing in with your paint that you're trying to brush apply, and you're compromising the system, if you like. Whereas I'm going to airbrush now over the top of the top colour, but you'll see, I mean, again, I won't flood it. If I was to flood the colour with the airbrush at the top coat, it would do the same thing. It would just make a bit of a mess of the system. All right. Everyone following? Yes. Cool. All right. So this is just a Tamiya paint. I thin my Tamiya paints with a lacquer thinner. So Tamiya is like a sort of a hybrid style of paint, if you like. You can thin it with water, you can thin it with alcohol, but I use lacquers. I use the lacquers just because I just find it just easier to use, more predictable. By introducing lacquer to a Tamiya paint, though, I'm making it a lacquer paint. These are what's called acrylic lacquers, so they're kind of sort of in the middle of like an acrylic paint and an SMS style lacquer. But they're just they just perform better with the lacquer thinner. We good? Following? Cool. Yeah, good. I want questions, guys. So please yell out if you got any questions. Yeah, no. So I'm going to change airbrush, and I'm doing this because this the chipping fluid is an acrylic-based product, right? Which means it's sort of water soluble. I don't like using the same airbrush for lacquer paints and then putting acrylics and stuff and like changing the different styles of paint I use, because it will contaminate the airbrush, and it just, you will start to find you're getting problems with your spraying. You don't know why. And when I started doing that, like literally a dedicated airbrush for acrylics and a dedicated one for lacquers, it just changed everything. I mean, I still obviously have to clean my airbrushes from time to time, but if you keep a lacquer in the lacquer brush, you just won't go wrong. So that's why I'm swapping that out. I mean, if you wanted to spray acrylic paints, then there's no reason you couldn't just flush it out and spray acrylic paint. So I definitely could do that. But I'm just going to use this one. These airbrushes are nothing special. That literally was the cheapest airbrush I could find on eBay, because I wanted to do a video on, to show that a cheap airbrush could still achieve really good results. I mean, this is a whole different rabbit hole, but the results you get from your airbrush are more about thinning of the paint and whatnot than the actual tool. I mean, obviously a good tool is very important, but that, I think I paid $20 delivered for this one. So anyway, we'll see. I haven't proved my theory yet. I haven't done the video, but it could blow up on me.
Same size needle?
That's actually a 0.3, this one, a 0.3 mil. This one is an old ammo airbrush with a 0.2, other way around. Yeah, that's finer, but that's, yeah, I'm having a mental blank. All right. I'm just going to use grey here because it'll show the chips up better than a darker colour. I mean, that's the other thing you have to consider too when you're thinking about your chipping colour. Like sometimes you have to get a little bit creative with the colours you're using, because the dark yellows, like the Dunkelgelbs, the German colours, work like really well with the dark chips. But if you try to do this colour chipping under like an olive drab or a green or something, you just don't see it, you know. So yeah, and you probably shouldn't be chipping olive drab anyway because it didn't chip in real life. So all I'm going to do is just pop a little bit of lacquer thinner in there. This is, I mean, you can see how loose I am with ratios and things. Again, this is just about controlling the airbrush. I'll soon work out if it's too thin or not. It probably looks like it's a bit too thin, but anyway, we'll see what happens. All right. Can everyone see that all right? No, I'm sort of angling it there. So all I'm doing is just putting a misted coat over just to set my foundations, get my feel for my airbrush. Just slowly start to build it up. I'll leave it a bit imperfect there because it might be a bit more interesting. I'll give it a quick burst with the hairdryer, so just bear with me. That's a good thing about lacquer paints too. They dry so fast. Like I can touch that now. Yeah, acrylic paints you probably wouldn't get away with that quick. Then it's just about having a bit of fun with it. So this is just water, nothing special. It doesn't have to be distilled or anything. Nothing special. All right. All I'm going to do is just coat the surface. Can everyone see that? So what that's doing now, just putting water over the surface, the water should be migrating through that top coat now. And then literally it's just a matter of, this brush is pretty clumsy, right? So when I mean clumsy, it's just big and hard and rough. If this was a model that I was actually, building for myself, I'd probably be using something, it's old brushes are great for this. Old sort of daggy brushes are good for this, and you can start chipping away at it. Is that coming up on the camera okay? Don't all flood me. So obviously while I'm doing this, it's more than likely sort of catching the high points, any sort of raised detail, which I guess in real life is what you want. They'd be suffering wear. I like focusing wear around hatches and grab handles and things like that.
Is the chipping solution just forming a barrier, or is it also activating the paint to barb and help it to get it off?
It's not actually activating the paint. It's what the water is doing is reactivating the chipping fluid. So we've got a shell of top coat paint that's the water's migrating through, and it's reactivating it, and it's actually chipping the paint. That's why it looks so good, because they're actual paint chips. It's not brush painted and stuff like that. Does that answer your question? Yeah, cool. So yeah, I mean, you can see how quick that came together. We'll keep going. So yeah, obviously different brushes, like something like this will literally just decimate this paint. This would be good for a railroad sort of scenario. Just spraying like an all over grime sort of situation like this. It's also good for burnt out tanks or wrecks or decaying vehicles and stuff, and literally removing the majority of it, and you end up with this sort of this grey crust sort of look, yeah. And it's really hard to get that sort of effect any other way. It's not impossible, but yeah. I mean, you saw how quick that was. Like literally, we've just done that in 15 minutes. The other cool thing that you can do, and I meant to bring toothpicks, but we'll try some cutlery here. So you can start thinking about like scratching and scuffing, like where a tank might, drive past a bush, or I know I said this wasn't going to be all about tanks, but yeah, just go with me here. So literally, yeah, you can start creating. Oh, there you go. It did work. You can literally draw in, scuff marks and scratch marks. You guys, is that coming up? So I would use a toothpick for that because it's nice and targeted, and you can, think about how, a bush, might scrape past it, or, good for rally cars and stuff like that. Yeah, so there we go. That's and there's nothing stop it. If you go too far, just do it again. Just put another layer on, and layering multiple layers of chipping fluid work really well. Just make sure you're sealing them between, like I could do, say like chip this, it's even come off with my finger now. I could chip this, seal it with a varnish, give it a day or two, and then come back and do some dusting effects and things like that. So we can achieve some really cool dusting effects using this as well. So like for a dust colour, I'd be using a buff. I might as well have a go with that. We're going to run out of time here, so I'll try and be quick, sorry. Please sing out if anyone's got a question.
How many times do you reckon you can reactivate the hairspray or the chipping fluid?
Once.
Just once?
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have a window to do it. Once it's done, it's done. I think. Yeah, I mean, you may be able to go back, the next day and think, I want to do a little bit more there or whatever. It might work, but the window would start closing, especially if you're using lacquer paints, because they will, they'll just dry to be a bit of a shell. So if I'm just going to spray a little bit of a dust layer. Actually, I'll do it here. So all I've done there is just a little bit of buff, right, to sort of simulate a dusty sort of, build up there. And then think about when you're doing this, the direction, like of what you're trying to do. So with dust, like if it got wet and stuff like that, you'd find it'd sort of, chip in a downward motion. It would. So rather than just randomly trying to chip it, if I just try to hack away at the top of it, this is something you guys are just going to have to come up and have a look at the end, because I appreciate it's hard to see. So just by working in that up and down motion, using a different colour, really good for doing dusted effects and things like that. It just gives a little bit more life, and it just looks like wet paint, wet mud, the way that kind of thing would wear. All good? So we cross hairspray chipping. I tell you what, I'll do. You know, you watch those cooking shows.
Here's one you prepared.
Peter's buttons aren't working. Oh. Okay, this is the new Real Colour range, right? So these are an acrylic lacquer, and you know when you watch those cooking shows and like it's the grand final and that, and it's time for them to cook something, and they try and cook something they've never cooked before, and you think, you idiot, why are you doing that? Well, that's what I'm about to do now. I'm sure these will work, but we'll give it a go. I like the colour, and I wanted to show you what it looks like over the aluminium colour, right? So I set this up earlier just with a little aluminium square. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cut a bit of a corner here. I'll come back to that, so just bear with me. But what I'm going to do is move on to the second technique, because I'm going to need that for the second technique anyway. So this is a latex mask, liquid latex. You pretty much and it looks like it's drying, so that's a bit of a problem. Every manufacturer will do a latex mask. If you can't get it like from a hobby store or something like that, then just go to an art shop, because artists use this sort of stuff all the time, the masks, I believe. You do have a small window with this because it dries very fast. But this is kind of cool as well, and it's cool because it does the same thing that the hairspray chipping does, in the fact that it's actually like it makes the paint chip, like it looks like it's chipping, rather than trying to paint on and simulate chips. This actually does chip the paint. So with any luck, no, you're not going to come out. This bottle's started to dry out, unfortunately, but I think we'll get away with it. Yeah, it's starting to dry, but anyway, I'll just put a bit here, and what I'm going to do is sponge it on with just a bit of old sponge. So it's literally just a couple of bucks from the hardware or Woolies or whatever it is. And hopefully this is
sort of gives you the same effect as salt chipping.
Yeah, that's the other one.
sort of. I'll come back to it. Ask me again. So what I'm doing, I'm going to start applying the chips of this. It actually does. To answer your question, it's the same sort of thing. This is just a bit more targeted. It's very hard to target salt chipping. Does anyone know what salt chipping is? Like, have you guys heard about that? Okay, for those of you who this is dried.
Salt and vinegar chipping.
Well, I mean, I've seen people use like Vegemite and toothpaste and stuff to do this as well. You could do it. I wouldn't do it, but yeah. Unfortunately, my latex mask is drying, and this is not going to work very well. Yeah, she's dead. Sorry, guys, but it'll give you an idea. So this one's really good because it's usually got the dropper bottle, and you can, it should be liquid, it should be runny, but this is.
Also, you can like just using the dropper too.
The sponge is going to give us interesting looking chips. I don't really know what it's going to give us here, but it's just not working. It just shouldn't look like that. Sorry. It's been in my car all day, and this is the result. Whatever, that'll do. That'll have to do. This is really good for like aircraft models and stuff who want to do chipping on panels and things like that. Because you can be really targeted with it. It should be a lot finer than this. This is because it's obviously dried in my car. But if you wanted to, if there was a maintenance hatch on a plane or something like that, you can mask it up, just masking tape, and literally just dab your sponge, around the corners of the panel and whatnot, and you'll get a really good targeted result. All right, so we'll give this a go now, eh? This is living on the edge. All right. So only this half has got the chipping fluid. That half has not been treated with anything other than just the latex mask. I haven't thinned this paint at all. This is straight out of the bottle. And I'll do, that's right, I was going to do that, wasn't I? Paint over any metallic surface will be really easy to chip. So because I've put this over a metallic, you'll probably find, well, it would definitely, sometimes you can chip paint over metallic surfaces without even using chipping fluid. It just doesn't grab because it's got the high gloss finish and things like that. But we'll have a go. Just wet my brush. So this is the side with the chipping fluid. Flood it and speed it up a bit for you. So you might find when you start doing this, if you start doing your scrub, I'm not gouging at that. I'm just rubbing it across the surface. If you're having to gouge and stuff at it, you probably left it a little bit too long, or you didn't use enough chipping fluid. If you're finding you're doing this and nothing's happening, it can be as easy as getting a toothpick and just doing a little nick in it. And it's like just to penetrate the surface, just to let the water get in, and then all of a sudden you'll find it'll start to open up. The technique will start to open up for you. So this only had 2 coats. I think this one, I don't think I coated this one a third time. I'm surprised this is so difficult to chip. Now I've told you how easy it is to chip metallic over that. Paint over the metallic. But yeah, of course I've used a paint I don't usually use, so that's awesome. Hey, possibly would have, yeah, if I'd have thinned it, it probably would have been a little bit easier to. But look, it's giving us a result here. Sorry, what was there a question there? Or?
No, it was just you don't do a 3-course meal to climb all the.
Yeah, well, apparently we do. I'm just taking the surface water away from that too, and you can, dry it off. So yeah, to answer the question from over there, like if I looked at that in an hour's time and wanted to keep going, I probably could. Yeah, I just probably couldn't the next day. Now this was the side we put the latex masking on. Can you see the textures and stuff sitting in there? Now to get that off, best thing I do is just a little bit of blue tack. Thank you to the club because I forgot it and I found some on the wall over there. And literally, if you just wipe it across, that's just removing that latex mask and chipping the paint with it. Okay, so that's over the metallic surface. So you get a feel for. It should actually look a lot finer than that too. It's obviously because my mask is dried. You can get some really nice fine chipping effects using that latex, and you could brush paint over that as well. because the brush painting, the paint won't set the masking fluid off. You would just have to be gentle, make sure you didn't bump it and knock it off.
So that's the VMS one, is it?
That's a VMS one, yeah. And I couldn't, I did try to replace it, but yeah, everywhere's out of stock. But Vallejo do a good one. They all do them, like, yeah, there's so many around.
Standing room only.
Yeah, Gary, you've missed it, mate. It's your fault. And any questions on that? I'm sorry that kind of failed miserably, that latex, but at least it worked on the silver, you can see. So that side was the chipping fluid, and that side was the latex mask. Yeah, so look, it worked, it just didn't work as well as it should have. And the last technique I want to show you, because we've got about, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, is just sponge chipping. This is just so easy for anyone to do. So rather than thinking about your chipping colour first with sponge chipping, you're thinking about your chipping colour last now. So you're going to paint your model how you want it, and then it's a matter. I'll use a metallic here. I'll use the aluminium just so it shows up well on the darker colour, and you'll get an idea of what it looks like. So again, it's just about thinking about what your chips are supposed to be replicating. So, you know, I mean, you can do it with wooden crates and things like that. You know, you'd be chipping in a wood colour rather than, you know, something else. Yeah. So let's put a little bit of that paint. This is the new Ammo acrylic paints. For what it's worth, they're actually really good. But yeah, this is an acrylic paint. You can use lacquers to do sponge chipping that I'm about to show you, but lacquers can be a little bit more sticky, and they just give you a little bit of a different result. Because these are water-based paints, they just tend to be a little more sort of usable and forgiving. But don't be afraid to have a go with lacquers for chipping, because it does work. But you've just got a smaller window of being able to use them, because they'll start drying on your sponge quicker than acrylics will.
Do you have to thin any of this? Like, can you just, that's straight out of the box because it's acrylic, but if it was a lacquer, would you have to thin it at all?
No, you don't have to. We'll have a go with this, you know. Yeah, it'll just give you different results. You don't want this too thin when you're trying to do the sponge, because it'll just make your sponge wet and just, you know. So you want this to be a little bit dry. So this, again, it's just a sponge. I'm just going to pick a few little bits off the end of it just to sort of give me a few random bits and pieces. Get a little bit of the paint just on the sponge, right? And then I'm just going to get rid of as much of it as I can. It's almost like dry brushing sort of idea, you know. You want to unload your brushes as much as you can, and this is where it comes down to feel. So you just don't want to be smashing. You want to just start touching just to see what happens till you start getting a result. The other thing you don't want to do with the sponge is treat it like a stamp. So a lot of people, which I've sort of started to do here, they just start turn, and because you're going to get the same random pattern just repeating all the way through your model. But if the sponge is loaded up with paint, just lightly touch it, and you'll find it'll start to be, you know, transferring the chips. If there's not enough chips going down, just push a bit harder. If you're pushing harder and you're not getting enough chips down, put a bit more paint on. And again, if you want to be targeted with this, of course I've thrown away my masking tape. But yeah, tape up panel lines like individual hatches or individual doors and stuff like that, and you can get some really interesting targeted, you know, chipping effects using sponge. It's so easy to do. You guys are welcome to come and have a bit of a play with it if you like. It's just, yeah, thinking about the colour that you're trying to represent underneath it, and just building it up from there. I'll have a go of the buff. see what happens. I use the sponging technique a lot to do weathering effects down along the bottoms of the guards and things like that as well. It's good to use like oil paints and enamel paints and weathering things just literally by dabbing. Again, it'd be perfect for a railroad type scenario.
Yeah, on the bottom of the carriage is where all the track the grind gets.
Yeah, and you get most of these techniques work well when they're layered, right? So doing one thing is great, doing two things can tend to look more realistic, you know. Think about the passage of time of what the vehicle might have seen, and just look at reference photos is your best way, and then just try and work out how am I going to, you know, do that in scale. I've just realised I didn't answer that question about salt chipping, did I? Oh yes, it was just not targeted. Yeah. So for those people, I didn't answer that, did I? For those who don't know salt chipping. So what it is, it's just you do your base colour, put grains of salt over where you want your chipping, mist it with a bit of water just so it sits on there, and then put your top coat on. Then you get your wet brush and do it, and the wet brush dissolves the salt and chips the paint. I don't like doing it because I can never get rid of the salt. I've always got tide lines from the salt. Washed them, yeah, so that's why I don't do that anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, I've had mixed results with it. Some
Yeah.
good, some bad.
Oh, some of it can look
Hard to
awesome.
control.
Yeah, but it's just too hard to control.
What I've found with aircraft, that you get a little bit of creep along recessed panel lines, because the salt, I suppose the water dissolves the salt.
Yeah.
It creeps along
Yeah.
the panel line and resolidifies, and then when you take that away, you get quite a nice fine chipping effect along the panel line.
Right. Okay.
But it's impossible to control.
Yeah. That's I just don't like it. I think where it works really well is like creating that patina on the tops of wings sometimes. You know, like that sort of dappled look. But yeah, it's just you just can't control it.
I've seen pictures of it where it's been used for like a spot of rust on the wagon side.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I can't remember whether you had to particularly put the salt there to get that spot.
The salt's just giving you a result. So you could do that. If I was doing that, I'd do it with the latex. Yeah. But if I was making rust, I would probably get some terrains paste or something to put a bit of texture on first.
Yeah.
So it sort of had lumps in it.
Yes, because the rust does it.
Paint it rust, latex, dab it on with a sponge, paint your top colour, and then rub it off with blue tack, and it'll look incredible. And then if you put some rust streaking in with it, you know, some enamel streaking or whatever, it'll just look epic. So any other questions at all? That's pretty much my time. Yep.
Yeah, I noticed some people online will still just use actual hairspray as opposed to the dedicated chicken fluids. Have you sort of compared the results?
Yeah, definitely works, but it can be a little bit unpredictable. I was using hairspray and it melted paint, and so I would, feel free to pass it around.
So many different brands and types, and it's
Yeah, just honestly, the more predictable you can be in your modelling and the more control you have, the better result you're going to have. So I just, it's when people have magic formulas and, you know, all that sort of stuff, and like, sure they might get results and stuff, but when you start to complicate the system is when you start having problems, and you know, and everyone's pointing the finger at everyone else, and 100% it works. It does the same thing. It's just unpredictable. So if you find one that works, go for it. You know, they'll all work. It's just
there's a lot of other additives in
Yeah.
there, aren't there?
yeah, and smells and scents and things that can affect the integrity of the paint.
And the wife gets a shit.
But yeah,
I solved that problem. I got divorced. I didn't get a choice in it though.
Yeah. But no, it's good. This is an effect that anyone can do. The sponge chipping, literally, you could go home this afternoon and just have a crack at doing that for sure. I can't get your buttons to work, Peter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all right.
otherwise it was still all working properly. But yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for that. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's just have fun with it. Chipping is so much fun, and just be mindful of over chipping. Whitewashes and stuff. If you're building armour, that's great for doing whitewash schemes. And chipping, that's fun. Dust chipping, but just be mindful. It's really easy when you start doing this technique to get excited by it and just go nuts with it. Oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. And all of a sudden you put your mould down. It's like, oh, ouch, you know. Yeah, so try and be mindful of like references. I mean, you know, like enjoy your model build, but yeah, try and use like American Tanks olive drab didn't chip, just did not chip. So it would be not appropriate to be chipping up your Sherman tank, unless you wanted to knock yourself out. But yeah, you know. Some things just chipped easier than others, yeah, and most people over chip their models. So the finer and more refined you can keep your chipping, usually the better the result. Your chipping shouldn't be obvious at first. When someone's looking at a model, it's when they still start looking, it's like it should just be really nice and targeted. Unless it was like a maintenance box or a toolbox or something that would get bashed around, or a wood crate, or yeah.
If you look around a little bit too, you can find like 3 or 4 different size of the holes in the sponges.
Oh, 100%,
much
yeah.
Finer,
Yeah.
So they're much more broader.
So yeah, different sponges will give you a different result. So just definitely, yeah, have a play around with it. Get a paint mule and just have a bit of fun with it, because it's a really easy thing to do.
Kmart have a lot of those sea sponges.
Yeah, I think I got them from I don't know, an art shop or something, or whatever it is, Spotlight. Yeah. Any other questions? Sure.
So I had a go at hairspray chipping
Yep.
on a whitewash German
Yep.
or toothing.
Yep.
And I found when pulling off big bits,
Yeah.
like to reveal markings, it gums up the brush and foams up. Have you come across
I would
that?
definitely foam up. Did you use hairspray or did you use chipping fluid?
Chipping fluid.
Okay. How many layers did you put on, do you reckon? 2? Yeah. It will definitely foam up. And it'll put like a bit of a, if you got white paint and you're doing that, it'll put a bit of a white sort of filter on it almost. There's no getting around that. I mean, if you wanted, you could probably, you know, put the masking thing over your decal before you started. Gumming up, yeah, I'm not sure about the gumming up, but it definitely foams up and it's like a washy. That's why I kept sponging it with the tissue just to pick up that excess water. But try maybe try. You used acrylic over the top, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe try lacquer paint. You know, over the top. Just chips differently, behaves differently. I mean, there's washable whites you can get as well.
Yeah.
You know, that are different again. So if you get the washable white paint and the chipping, you know, you get something all, you know,
Sure.
different together. Cool. Anything else? Any other questions? No. Cool. Thank you, guys. Please don't handle that delicately. It's throw it around. It's
Just don't clap them.
do what you want. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time, guys. I hope you learned something. Yeah, it was awesome. Hello, mate. How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, good.
One quick question. How long have you left one of these courses and you're still able to achieve?
The first one, you mean? When I first started one at home?
One you got.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the one I would have done that.